Hey everyone. Today I'll be explaining some ECG stuff regarding tachycardias, atrial and ventricular tachycardias, atrial such as atrial flutter, fibrillation, sinus tachycardia, atrial tachycardia, all of these things. These videos generally, I don't know, it's the first, or I'll order them later. So I don't know if I'm going to continue in a series of these or it's just going to be this one. This is going to be targeted first and foremost to third-year students, Sagad University, and some of the sixth-year students also who would need it in internal medicine. So yeah, that's it. Let's get started. So we're going to talk about first tachycardias, as we said. First, let's talk about atrial tachycardias. Atrial. Okay. The thing is, in atrial tachycardias, the main types that we have are, we got sinus tachycardia and atrial tachycardia and junctional tachycardia. Now, junctional can be considered as a subtype of atrial tachycardia. Sinus tachy, okay. If you remember from APCs, the APCs, when we talked about them, atrial premature complexes or extrasystoles, in these ones there's one extra beat that comes outside the SA rhythm that comes from the sinus node. So, and we said it had some specific characteristics. For example, if there's a beat that comes from the SA node, then since SA node is a pacemaker, then it will give us RRs following every P wave at the same intervals. But if you have another focus, let's say this is the atria, okay, giving to the ventricles. So if there's another point other than the SA node firing coming from here, then you will see another P wave that gives another QRS. And the thing about this P wave is that it would look different than the SA node that we're used to, the same P wave that should be normal morphology. We'll talk about these in another time, or maybe I have talked about these earlier. So let's start with these. Tachycardia, sinus tachycardia. The thing about this one, how to recognize it on an ECG, of course, if you start the analysis with rate, rhythm, axis. First three things always. The rate definitely is going to be more than 100 beats per minute. Then rhythm, here's the thing, it's going to be a sinus. We said it's a sinus tachycardia. So it's going to be a sinus rhythm. But it's not the normal sinus rhythm. So here's the thing. It's going to be sinus, meaning, as we know, the first thing that we check if it's regular or not regular. So if there's the same RR or not. So the first thing it will, since it's coming from the SA node, then it will give us always same intervals. And the second point is we check if it's coming from SA node or not. Here's the thing. This is SA node, AV node, bundle of His, bundle branches, then Purkinje fibers on the right, and this one is the left. Of course, this one there's the anterior and the posterior. We'll talk about them later. And here's like the P wave internodal pathways. So when we say it's a sinus rhythm, it means that every QRS that we get here, everything before the AV node, this is the AV node and this is SA. Everything before the AV node is going to be correct. And we know that at the AV node, there's an AV delay. So everything before AV node is going to be sinus, meaning it's going to be fine. So there is a P wave before every QRS. Every QRS we get here, every R wave is coming from the SA node itself. That's one condition. Second is that it should be conducted throughout the atria normally. So the P wave morphology should be this way. For example, if it came from here, from an ectopic focus, and it goes this way, then this wouldn't be a sinus rhythm because the P wave would look different than it would if it had come from here. So that's why the P wave morphology should look normal. And when we say morphology, every wave we analyze it in 3 parts: the duration, amplitude, and morphology in general. The duration of a P wave, as we know, should be less than 3 small boxes. I memorize it like this. So let me just write here the P axis. So P wave. The P wave should go here in duration less than 3 small boxes, and it should go up less than 2.5 small boxes, small squares. Okay, and this is millimeter. And the morphology of the P wave is that it should be positive in all leads. Why is that? Because all the leads, whether it's lead 2, AVF, 3, 1, that goes like this, AVL, so all of them should be positive, because P wave goes something like this, except AVR, that goes all the way that way. So it's negative in AVR and positive in all the leads, and biphasic in lead V1. Why is that? V1 goes, we put the lead here on the 4th intercostal space to the right of the sternum. And we said that in the basics that the vector of the lead goes from the center of the heart towards the lead. So the lead is something like from the inside of my heart all the way there. So something like this. Now here's the thing. This is V1 and this is V2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, because we put the leads all the way there. So this is V1 and here is right atrium, left atrium. The depolarization of the right atrium, it comes from here, the top right corner SA node, and goes all the way to the, like, let's say somewhere here or here. So at the bottom, front, at the AV node. So it goes throughout the atria towards the AV node. So, and then of course there's the left atrium. So if you see that here, it's like this. The wave goes from SA node to AV node, so it's like this, right? So this is the direction of the right atrial depolarization, and this is V1. It's like with it. It's not against it. It's kind of with it. So that's why we see it as a positive wave. And then to the left, it goes that way, because it starts from here, as we said, from a SA node, and goes towards the left. So it's like this. And then there's the V1. So you see they're like opposite to each other. One's like this, one's like this. And this is why we should see the P wave biphasic in V1. Okay? Because one goes with it and the other goes like all the way there. So these are the normal morphology. We said duration, amplitude, and morphology, why it's always positive there, except AVR, and biphasic in V1. Now, going back to this one, so we said there are three criteria for a sinus rhythm. So the rhythm will be here a sinus rhythm. Okay, so rhythm is sinus rhythm, but it's a sinus tachycardia. So here's the thing. So far, until we got to this point that it's a sinus rhythm, we said that, first of all, the RR are regular. We keep getting impulses at same rate, same intervals, same times. So we checked already for RR. Then we checked for 3 things together to determine that it's a sinus. There is a P wave before every QRS, meaning it's initiating normally from the right place. And then there is, so P wave before every QRS, and every QRS has a P. Because if we see a P without QRS, it means the P got blocked. Or, for example, if we see a QRS without a P, it means that this QRS came from somewhere without a P, So that's why we need here, this PQRS, PQRS. The second one should be the P wave morphology, as we said, is conducted throughout the atria normally. Okay, we said this is the bad one, the normal, so there's no such thing here. And the third one is that the PR is normal, meaning that it stops at the correct time, then it continues after the AV node to give us a QRS. So in some books, the rhythm here is referred to as everything before QRS should be normal, meaning everything here until the AV node, of course AV node included. Now some other books consider, they say no, sinus rhythm or normal rhythm means that everything in the heart, not just the origin of QRS, so everything, even the QRS should be narrow and no STT changes, T wave normal, so it considers that it's just a normal heart rate, normal rhythm. But some books say no, and I think the ones that we take at our university say that until the QRS. So even if QRS is wide, let's say here's a bundle branch block or something, a block here, then we still can consider it normal sinus rhythm, meaning originating normally from the sinus node. Okay, so we will have a sinus rhythm here. Axis, it really doesn't matter. If there's an sinus tachycardia, then the axis is not actually a criteria. It can be like here, there, whatever. It doesn't matter. Depends on, if it's different, of course, it might be another disease, but it's not necessarily something that has to do with sinus tachy. Okay, PR. So we said there's nothing wrong with the heart at all. It's only the SA node. It's hastened. It's giving impulses faster than the normal way. This can be, for example, due to increased sympathetic tone, so more adrenaline, noradrenaline. It could be decreased parasympathetic. It could be due to like ischemia, fibrosis, inflammation, whatever. You can name a lot of reasons. Anything that can happen on the SA node can cause a tachy or a brady. So PR is what? Fine. QRS, since it's being conducted through the normal pathway, that's why it's going to be also fine. ST, fine. T, fine. QT, fine. All fine. Of course, QT, we need to correct it because we correct QT when there's a tachycardia or a bradycardia. All right. So this is it. When any of you analyzes an ECG with sinus tachy, you'll find nothing abnormal about it. By the way, the P wave, we said it's fine. So you'll find nothing abnormal about it, except the heart rate is fast. Okay? Now, atrial tachy, when we said atrial, so here's the red line there, it means it's coming from this point right here. So this point is giving us extra beats and causing more. So how will you see it? Rate, also gonna be high. I'm just gonna write the abnormal stuff. So rate is increased, more than 100. Rhythm, it's not gonna be sinus. Why? Correct, for those who guessed it. Because it's not initiating from the SA node. It's starting from somewhere else, and the P wave will not look like the same way it should look. For example, it might be negative in some lead, like where it should be positive. So yeah, rhythm is not sinus, but you only stop at the word regular. If it is regular. If it's not, then you say it's irregular. You just measure the RR, but there's no rule for it. Axis doesn't matter. Now P wave is abnormal. Now this doesn't mean necessarily that it's prolonged or shortened or high amplitude, low amplitude. It's just different. You might see in one ECG some normal P waves and then abnormal P waves, a series of abnormal P waves. Then you would know. Or for example, it can be that there isn't just one focus, but actually there might be more than one focus. Here the star and the X and blah 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 giving you. So it can be, for example, multifocal. Okay? So in this case, what would you see on an ECG? You'll see something like here's a P wave, and then QRS, doesn't matter really, T. Then you'll see another P wave, QRS, and then a T, and then you'll see like another P wave, and then QRS, and then a T, and then you'll see a P, QRS, and T. So you see that the P waves that we have, this one is kind of peaked or something. This one looks an M. This one looks crazy. So, and this one is like normal. So you see QRSs, sorry, this one should be narrow. My drawing is not really the best. So you see that normal QRSs all of them should be narrow, meaning it's conducted normally, but they're originating from different P's, from different P waves. And this means it's atrial. This is multifocal atrial tachycardia. Of course, it should be tachy. Yeah, there's a lot. And that's it. Then PR, right? Now here's the thing. PR refers to what? It refers to the P and the PR segment. So the PR segment and the P wave before it. Meaning it refers in reality to the depolarization of the atria and then the silence or the delay that occurs at the AV node. So here's the thing, if we have different foci giving beats from different places, then the depolarization of the atria is going to be different, right? So that's why PR is going to be different. So it might be shortened, might be prolonged, might be normal, okay? So, but I'm just telling you this so you can expect it. So the PR is gonna be also, sorry, this should be in green, okay, abnormal, and this is also abnormal. And here's a hint. There are sometimes you might find in one ECG like a P and then a PR, and QRS, then a T, okay? Then you find a P and a long PR, QRS, and a T. And then P, PR, QRS, and a T. Here is the thing. This PR and this PR, the ones in blue. I don't know if you see it as blue or black, but anyways. So these two, this one and this one, are actually normal, but this one is prolonged, right? So here you should you should not say that there's a prolonged PR, so this is a first degree AV block. No. AV block means there's a disease at the AV node. So for example, let's say there's fibrosis on the AV node or amyloidosis, something deposited, something made it abnormal, even a drug that delays the conduction, digoxin. So this prolonged PR doesn't mean you have a block. No, this long PR is for the abnormal. I should have drawn the P wave in a different shape to show you that this is a prolonged because of the fact that it's not sinus, so it can be different and it doesn't mean a block. If it's a first degree block, then this block would have affected this and this and this, so it should affect the normal ones too. Then you can name it a first degree AV block. Okay, so here's the thing, yeah, this is it. QRS gonna be normal, ST fine, T fine, all fine. Alrighty, junctional tachycardia. Now junctional is a subtype of atrial. What do we mean here? My drawings are getting worse and worse with time. Okay. Junctional, by definition, it is the area within the atria that is around the node, around the AV node. Okay? Or it can be also within the node. Of course, it has the three subtypes. Let's say the ectopic focus is here. Okay, here. Then from the ectopic focus, it will spread everywhere. But the main two directions are the one that goes to AV node that gives the QRS, right? Like there, and QRS. That's the red one. And this one in black that will go opposite towards the SA node, and it will depolarize. It will depolarize the atria that way. Now, what's the normal way for atria to depolarize? This way. So this one goes that way. How do you see it on an ECG? Opposite P. Okay? It's not just different, it's opposite. So it will be positive where it should be negative, and it's negative where it should be positive. Now, here's the thing. The red, okay, the black one and the red one. It doesn't mean that you will always get a QRS first and then you get a P just because this is closer here and further there. No. This can be faster than this. So if this is faster, it's the one that it's the tract that is up the junction. sorry, up the ectopic focus, this one. So if it's the one up, it's supranodal. Meaning, in this case, if the black one is faster, you will see an inverted P wave, okay? Then QRS, then a T wave. And this is supra. But if you see the red one faster, make sure the red. Then first you will see a QRS, and then you will see a P wave. So you'll see a QRS, okay, then a P, then a T, okay? And this is infranodal, meaning the one that goes down is faster, infranodal. Okay, what if they both go at the same time? Then the P wave, that is opposite, and the QRS will happen at the same time. And of course, since if they both happen at the same time, we won't be able to see the P wave. Poor thing goes hidden. So it's covered by the QRS, then a T wave. That's it. And this is mesonodal. Now, how do you differentiate a mesonodal from from a VPC? How do you know that this is coming from a junction and then conducted downwards, or is it a VPC, like starting from here and going? First, there are two things. First, the QRS will be narrow in a mesonodal because it's being conducted through the normal pathways. So this is the first thing. While if it was a VPC, it will go cell to cell, and of course cell to cell takes longer time, so the QRS will be wider. You'll see a prolonged or wide QRS. The other thing is, if it was a VPC, then with VPC always, if it's abnormal depolarization, there is abnormal repolarization. So you always see a discordant T wave with VPCs. But in this one, you see a concordant because, as we said, conduction is occurring normally. So that's it. These are the ones about atrial. Of course, we have two more special forms, which are atrial flutter and atrial fibrillation. Let's keep drawing. Okay. Now, first thing that you need to know about the flutter and fibrillation is the mechanism. This is very important in the exams, both exams, third year and sixth year. Now, the mechanism for atrial flutter is that instead of the atria being one unit, as we know, both atria are supposed to be one unit. They depolarize at once, they contract at once. So in atrial flutter, instead of the atria depolarizing at once like this, or contracting, then it will depolarize on steps or stages. So it will be divided into two to five circuits. So every circuit will depolarize on its own. So it will be, instead of like this, it will be like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It will keep on going like this. And it will keep doing this at the same rates, meaning the difference between a circuit and the next one, and this one, and the next one, and the next one, and with the first one, it will keep occurring at the same pace, no matter what's happening in the ventricles. But here's the thing. Now, if it's like this, then the AV node is in contact with the last one. So you can see it like this. Let's say here you have 3 circuits. So this one might depolarize, or this one might start depolarizing on its own. And then from this point, it gives to the next one, and from here to here, and from this one to the AV node. So what I'm saying is the AV node, thus QRSs that we're gonna get later, are always coming from the same circuit. That comes, or that depolarizes at the same interval after every cycle. So these, and then by the way, from this it will go back up. So it will keep like 1, 2, 3, and then 1. And while 1 is happening, you see here there are 2 arrows up and down, up and down. So as it's happening down, it will happen up again. So we got 1, 2, 3, QRS 2, 3, QRS 2, 3, because this one will be within the QRS. Sometimes you see it within. Sometimes it happens separately. So just expect it. I'll tell you how to know it. So here's the thing. The mechanism here, as we said, is a macro re-entry circuit. While this one, the mechanism is micro re-entry circuits. What does this mean here? The atria is divided into hundreds or even thousands of micro circuits that will depolarize on their own. It's like this. So if this is the atria, instead of like we said 1, 2, 3 in flutter, here it's just going to be like this. It's like trembling. So you even see it like this trembling. That's why you see the ECG. It's like this. So this is just trembling. And if we say the AV node is here, then it is close to at least these. Let's say each one of these is a circuit, every piece of my fingers here. So when it happens like this, like they keep happening, then the AV node might get from here or here or here or here. But here, of course, in reality, it's much more than just 6. So this one might give impulse to the AV node, or this one, or this one, or this one, or this one, or this one. Sorry. Okay, it might come from any of these points. And that's why every time we get a QRS and we get ventricular depolarization, it will be coming from a different focus, a different circuit. And sometimes the circuit wouldn't be able or wouldn't be strong enough to give us the depolarization. So what do we get from these 2 points so far? It's very important, the rhythm. Here, the rhythm occurs at the same interval after the first one. That's why the QRSs that we get are always gonna be regular. There's the same time between QRS. As we said, QRS 1, 2, 3, QRS 1, 2, 3, QRS 1, 2, 3, like this. But this one is not. And here's a key word that you really need to say in both exams. The rhythm in atrial fibrillation is called arrhythmia. Okay, it's called arrhythmia absoluta. I know it's absolute arrhythmia, but bear with me. Just say the Latin one, please. Examiners will like you better. So it's arrhythmia absoluta. But what does arrhythmia absoluta mean? It means that in atrial fibrillation, this arrhythmia absoluta is not just irregular. Okay, sorry about this. So it doesn't mean that the distances are not the same, but it means also that these, if you add them all together within 1 minute, they might be less than 60 or they might be more than 100. There's no rule. So it can be tachyarrhythmia absoluta or normal arrhythmia absoluta or bradyarrhythmia absoluta. Okay, so the rate is not a rule here. So this can come with tachy or normal or brady. Okay, these ones. While here it's probably because it's a type of a tachyarrhythmia, then it's probably going to be a tachycardia. But even if you don't see tachycardia, it's it doesn't mean that, oh, it's definitely not a flutter. It still might be a flutter. Now, let's move on. Now I'll talk about each one separate. This is just for us to differentiate or to compare. So now, rate, rhythm, axis. Axis wouldn't be changed. Now, P wave. Here's the thing. There are no P waves. This is really important. So, in flutter, there are no P waves, but rather, you can describe them as sawtooth F waves. Okay? So here you will find, I drew it here, I'm gonna draw it. So you'll find like this, QRS, QRS, QRS. You see? Sawtooth. All right, now let me just tell you two rules, really important ones for these F waves. First one is that FF is regular. Why is this important? Because we would need to determine the conduction ratio, meaning how many circuits are there or how many F waves to QRSs. In this example that I drew here, we have 1, 2, 3, right? So you would think, oh, it's a 3-to-1, but it's not. Here's why. Because this is an FF, this is an FF, assuming it's regular, I try to make it, but this until here, you see there's something wrong, right? So there must be 1 here, which would make it correct. So this is actually 4-to-1, and not, this is 4-to-1 and not 3-to-1, because FF should always be regular. We said they depolarize independent of the ventricles, of the QRSs. And another rule is that F is opposite to R. Because R wave goes this way, right, from here, like R wave is that way. And then these ones, the depolarization is probably going to be opposite. Okay, it's going to be the other way. So why is this important? Sometimes you'll find like so here, how would you know if this is the F wave or this is the F wave? Then from here, you should decide these ones. Okay? And the same, how much is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? No, there's 1 here. Because we said the FF should always be regular. Okay? So here, they're actually this, okay, and this one. 1, 2, 3, then 4, then 1 here. Okay? So these are P. What about PR? Well, if there's no P wave, then there's no PR. That's it. After that, QRS. QRSs will be all normal. QRS is fine because there's nothing wrong with the conduction here. ST, also fine. T wave, also fine. But sometimes you don't actually see a T wave because these F waves are strong, so they cover the T wave. But the T wave is still there. You know, there's still repolarization of the ventricle. Doesn't mean that they don't repolarize. All right, so this is it. Don't forget, it's regular, and you see the sawtooth F waves. FF is regular and F is opposite. This is for us to determine these two, to determine the conduction ratio or conduction rate. 4-to-1 conduction rate. All right, next one, atrial fibrillation. We said it's micro circuits, and then the QRS gets its depolarization every time from a different one. So that's why we get irregular rhythm. It's definitely irregular. You can say irregular, but it's better to say arrhythmia absoluta. So it's irregular. Rate, rhythm, axis wouldn't matter. P wave, you can say there's fine or small F waves. Okay, and it's a small letter F. So small can mean small letter F or like really small. It's correct both ways. Well, this one is capital F wave, okay? So P, no P wave, no P, but rather small fine F waves. PR, no PR, because if there's no P, cannot determine PR. QRS is fine, ST fine, T wave is fine, okay? And as a consequence of these, just gonna say the fibrillation one because it's consequences of atrial fibrillation are the first one, as we said, if this is the atria and it's not gonna depolarize correctly, then it's just gonna fibrillate like this, just small movements. Then there's gonna be blood in the atria that wouldn't go down. Of course, 75% of the atrial blood goes down to ventricles just by gravity. But 25% is by contraction. So we lost this 25. What does it mean? There's 25% less blood in the ventricle, which means 25% less blood to the body. So there's decreased cardiac output. What happens if someone has decreased cardiac output? They will have exercise intolerance and they will have, weakness, fatigability, whatever you can name it. All these decrease the quality of life. So there's exercise intolerance. Okay, there. That's one thing. The second one, which is also important, what happened to this 25% that we said? It stays here. What if blood stays? So there's blood stasis. The blood remains in there. And if there's a stasis of the blood, yes, exactly, clotting. And this will lead to embolism. So there will be like a clot, then goes down and embolizes somewhere else. Oops, embolism. All right, so this was it about flutter and fibrillation. Next, we're going to talk about ventricular flutter and fibrillation after the break. Hey everyone, so we're back and we're going to do the ventricular tachycardias. So, ventricular tachy. Now these ones are really easy. Get this, just from the name of it, okay, just from the title, look how many things we can figure out. So the rate, how much is the rate going to be in these? By the way, let's just explain what are these. Ventricular tachycardias, it means that you have, we can explain here. It means that you have beating, okay, but it comes all from here. You know how you might have a normal one, then a VPC, then a normal one, then a VPC, right? You can call this VPC in bigeminy because it comes normal, abnormal, normal, abnormal, and so on. Or if you have a VPC, then you call this a couplet, right? Or if you have VPC, then you can call it a triplet. Or they say that the other name for triplet is ventricular tachycardia, meaning when you have beats originating from ventricle and then they go cell to cell and then that's how they spread. This is a ventricular tachycardia when you have more than 3. So this, you will see an ECG that's just like these, it's just random stuff, okay? So what will the rate be? It says tachy, right? So obviously above 100 beats per minute. Rhythm. Would you think that a ventricular like VPCs would come at the same rate? Do you think an ectopic focus from the ventricle can give like normal rhythm? Of course not. So it's irregular. Okay, unless it's monomorphic, meaning it comes from the exact same focus, then it will keep giving you maybe at the same rate, meaning it gives you it becomes a pacemaker basically, so it gives you regular beats. But anyways, this is really easy. You just look at the ECG and you see if the RRs are like really random or not. Probably they're going to be irregular 90% of the cases. Now access, here's the thing, normal access in a normal heart, yeah. So normal access in a normal heart should go something like this with the R wave, right there. But in this one, it can come from here to here, from here to here, from here to here, because the point can be anywhere in the ventricles. So it can be like this. So we don't know, but it's definitely changed than the normal one. Even if it was, let's say, 60 degrees, and then someone starts getting a ventricular tachycardia, then it might be just 65. And this is still axis change. So there's a change in axis here. Rate, rhythm, axis, P wave. We said all of these ventricular tachycardias are VPCs, ventricular premature complexes, or extrasystoles basically. And what do ventricular extrasystoles have? They have, yes, no P waves. So no P. What about PR? No P, then there's no PR. How can you say that? How dare you? QRS. So QRS we analyze in 3 parts, okay? Duration, amplitude, and morpho. Well, since it's a VPC, then the duration is going to be prolonged or wide, right? All VPCs are wide. Amplitude also high amplitude. Okay, I'm just going to write high amplitude. Okay, because a VPC goes cell to cell, that's why it's wide. And because when it goes cell to cell, there is more calcium content within the cells than the normal pathways. Normal pathways are just like a highway. They're really fast, but they don't have any machinery inside them. While the cells they have the sarcoplasmic reticulum full of calcium. So when it depolarizes with higher amplitude, meaning with more electricity or with more charge. That's why amplitude is higher. Morphology, we're going to talk about this part, okay? ST, because it's going to differ between different types. ST, as we said, with great powers comes great responsibility. So ST, we're going to see secondary ST changes. T wave, discordant, of course. And another thing is that because it's a tachycardia, because of this, okay, you're going to see something like R wave, and then a T wave, and then R wave, and then a T wave, and then an R wave, and then a T wave, and then an R wave, and T wave. So you'll see something R on T phenomena, R on T. So you really don't know where the beginning of QRS begins and the end of the T, where does it end? So this is called R on T. It's not that important. It's just if you want it to be more articulate with the ECG. R on T phenomena. There. Now all of this is already established just with the name ventricular tachycardias. Now here's the thing. How do we classify them? They can be classified by morphology. So it can be monomorphic, or polymorphic. Monomorphic means that these QRSs are going to have exactly the same morphology because they come from the same ectopic focus. So they're going to be trying to make them the same in T, 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 something like this. So all the QRSs are wide and the same morphology. Okay, and that's it. This is it about this part. Now, polymorphic, we classify them further into 3 subtypes. So polymorphic, we can have ventricular flutter, just like we had atrial one. We have ventricular flutter or ventricular fibrillation, or this one, and please pardon my French, it's Torsade de point. All right, mechanism. What did we say mechanism was in Flutter? Yeah, I gave you some time to try to guess it. So it's macro re-entry, while fibrillation, micro re-entry circuit. Okay, we said that the QRS here, the QRS is wide, okay, and tall, and morphology, it's going to be what? Polymorphic. So every QRS is going to be different than the next one, okay? Different QRSs. And this one's also the same. QRS is wide, tall, and polymorphic, okay? Same thing. But then, how do we differentiate? So here's what the books say, but you cannot really differentiate always on an ECG because they can overlap and the flutter can turn into fibrillation. The thing that they say is that because this one comes from a macro re-entry, then the group of beats that you're gonna see will have the same amplitude. I'm gonna draw it here. So it's gonna be like something like this. You see how they have the same amplitude here? This is flutter. So every group, and then you might have another ones that are like this. So every group comes from one focus, or you can say from one re-entry circuit, from one circuit. So we can write here QRS wide, tall, but we said same amplitude for every group. And in fibrillation, different amplitudes. Okay. Additionally, in Flutter, because it's the first one that happens like within the polymorphic ones in order. So you might still see some normal beats, some normal QRSs. So these ones are called, if you just see like these normal random bad ones, and then you see just P, or even without a P, sorry, just QRST. Now this is called a captured beat. Okay, so what is a captured beat? It's a normal beat. What does normal differ than the rest of these crazy ones? It means it's narrow or normal in duration. It's narrow, normal in duration, plus it has low amplitude, right? It's not like these ones, low amplitude. There's another thing that you might see, which is called, make it in green here. So it's also narrow, but it's just higher like this. So it has the height, or it's as tall as the VPCs, as these ones, but it's as narrow as the normal one. So it's like the normal one, and those are fused. So it's called the fusion beat. So second one is fusion beat. What are these? These are narrow also, like the normal one, narrow, plus they are tall, high amplitude. Okay, these are some normal. It's like the lead on the chest. It could capture one normal among all these abnormalities, or a fusion one. Now the last one. Let's talk about Torsade. It's not how it looks like, but just trying to. Okay, it's something like this. So, but without these lines. So in Torsade de Pointe, what you will see is that it goes like this, in a spindle shaped, okay? So you see spindles. This is very, very characteristic of it. And every spindle is made up of 5 to 20 beats. Now what happens in these? Every spindle represents a focus in the heart, in the ventricles, okay? So let's say this one started beating, giving you impulses throughout these. Of course, in the beginning, it begins strong, and then it kind of dies out. It gets exhausted. Then another one takes over and starts giving you the impulses. And then it dies out, gets exhausted, and then another one. Now this is, I can say, the last stage before death, before asystole. Because someone is actually just getting lucky to get another focus to start giving the impulses, to initiate the rhythm. Because if this one gets exhausted, then you might not have any point that will take over, and that's it. Then it's asystole. So every point starts giving you the beats and then dies out. Giving beats and dies out. Okay? So what happens here? What do we say? There are spindles. Okay, this is an amplitude. So spindle shaped, or the amplitude goes like this. And the axis, now we don't know where the axis is, but we know for sure that the points are changing every time it's coming. So we know that axis, we don't know how much is it exactly, but we know for sure that it changes. It's constantly changing with every spindle. Okay? Now, we said that this classification is based on morphology, but there's another one that's really important also. The other one is that these 1, 2, 3, these ones, and with these, of course. So you got this one, this, and this, and this. So 1, 2, 3, these three, they have normal cutie. I know, you're gonna ask, how do we see cutie? We don't see the beginning of QRS because cutie is QRS and T. And we don't see the end of T. How do we know that? Here's the thing. This has been proven in experimentally, okay, in research. They tried to give some mice or rats, I guess, fibrillation, and they measured the opening and closing of the channels. Because you know QT is QRS and T, right? So it's depolarization and repolarization that is dependent on the channels opening, the calcium channels and potassium. Now, if you remember how or what are the cases that the QT can be prolonged, it's mostly with sodium channel abnormalities such as Brugada syndrome and these ones, or with hyper or hyponatremia, or with potassium channels, the inwardly rectifying channels. These are Jervell and Romanoward syndrome, all these syndromes, crazy names, whether it's loss of function or gain of function, and the calcium channels, okay? Or hypercalcemia, hypocalcemia, or hypokalemia, hyperkalemia. So these things, the electrolyte abnormalities, change the QT. Now, if you have a normal QT, what does it mean? It means that the ventricles are depolarizing and then repolarizing in an acceptable time frame within one cycle. Okay, for example, here, let's say this is a duration of one heart cycle. So it starts with a P wave, QRS, and T. Okay, and here starts another P wave. So before this beginning of P wave here, this is one full cycle. Okay, now we know that for normal heart rate, that's from 60 to 100, the QT range should be from 0.35 to 44. Of course, it differs between males and females, doesn't matter. Let's take the 35, for example, just to make things easy. 35 is almost a third of a second, right? So let's consider someone has a rate of 60 beats per minute. Then every beat takes 1 second. So this is 1 second for one beat. So if we have just 1 second here, then the QT time, the QRS and the T, so ventricular work, whether it's depolarizing and repolarizing, it should have a third time, and then the 2/3, it just rests, it does nothing. And of course, that's how ventricles can work for all of our lives, for a lifetime. It's actually really easy, you know? Like imagine someone resting for just working for 1/3 and resting for 2/3 of their lives. That's quite easy. So yeah, ventricles don't have actually the most difficult job. Anyways, so for this 60 beats per minute, for this rate, when every cycle gets a whole second, this third is appropriate. But what if instead of, so this third is appropriate, right? What happens if this third is prolonged? Then the ventricles, this is ventricular working, so the ventricular work, it's working too much and it's not resting enough in every cycle. Then this will make it more prone to exhaustion. That's why if you see a prolonged QT, you really need to fix it. Okay? The other thing is, if it's too short, then it's not working enough. Then it's not supplying normal depolarization so that you would have normal contraction. So both ways are problematic, a prolonged QT and a shortened QT. Now what happens if you have still 0.35, let's say third of a second, right? But the rate, the heart rate is now, let's say, halved. So it's 30 beats per minute, 30 beats. So meaning within every 2 seconds, there's one complex. So then we have this much. And it's still just 1/3. That's why you need to correct the QT in relation or relatively to the 2 seconds, so to the heart rate, to the RR. So that's where it comes that we need to correct the QT, which is the equation written as here, okay, QTC, the corrected QT by Fredericia, or you can use Bazzett's. Fredericia is the one that's more accurate, is the QT that you measure, okay, over the cubic root of RR. So that's why it's like you take it relatively to the RR. So here in these ones, flutter and fibrillation, the QT is normal, okay? But in this one, torsade de pointe, by the way, torsade means like, so it's like these are a beat, and these are a beat, and these are a beat. It's like jumping. The ventricle has jumping foci. Jumping is like the focus that is initiating goes, it's like this, you know, torsade de pointe. Or maybe de pointe, I mean like with an S, I think it's plural, de pointe, not de pointe. I don't know. Who am I to say? So in this one, we have a prolonged, and that's a difference, prolonged QT. How do we know this? Also by research, okay? Why is this difference very important? Because when you do have a torsade de pointe, then it means you should know it on your own that this one has a prolonged cutie and you need to correct the cutie. How can we correct cutie? Either by giving, this is for 6th-year students, so either by giving calcium or sodium, but this is really rare to have low sodium. Usually the body has enough sodium in it. Or by taking away some potassium. You need to decrease potassium, okay, in any way possible. I don't know, by the way, I'm just a student for now, so I'm not sure. Maybe I'll make another video and tell you exactly how this happens. So maybe if you want to decrease the potassium, you might give insulin to make it go into the cells, okay? Or I don't know if you might give a diuretic to get rid of, not the case pairing ones, of course. Okay, or you need to give calcium to correct it, because calcium shortens the QT. And this is why this is very, very important. All right? So that's it for today. Ventricular and atrial tachycardias. And good luck, guys.